All right, welcome back to the Midlife Momentum podcast. Today, I've got a guest with me. Her name is Lisa Goldberg. Lisa is a nationally recognized nutritionist, behavioral weight loss expert, and author, dedicated to helping her clients achieve lasting weight loss through habit, behavior, and mindset change. With a master's degree in clinical nutrition, Lisa's been coaching clients since 2001, guiding them towards sustainable weight loss by addressing the root causes of emotional eating and unhealthy food patterns. She also has a book. She's the author of Food Fight: Winning the Battle with Food and Eating to Achieve Sustainable Weight Loss, where she shares her proven strategies for long-term success. Lisa's compassionate and results-driven approach empowers individuals to take control of their eating habits and transform their lives for good. So I'm really thrilled to have you here with me, Lisa. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and have this conversation with you because I feel like there's so many people who need to hear it. Because a lot of what we're going to talk about, there's a lot of, shame around this particular behavior. So I think that it would be a good, way to open a conversation.
Yes, I think that is exactly what it is. That's why it's so good to bring it out into the open and talk about it because for sure, by the time we get to midlife, this is a very ingrained thing in us, right? So I know that you call it the dieter's mindset, and there's a certain way of thinking. So what is the dieter's mindset, and what are the thoughts kind of associated with that?
So having done the work that I've done, over these last 20 plus years around habit behavior and mindset change, what I noticed, even really early on when I, got my degree and I was seeing people in the office and, coaching them on, then it was just about what to eat and what not to eat. What kind of got me into this as a quick aside was all of my clients had the same question that was, what can I eat after dinner?
Mm-hmm.
Just eat
Yes.
dinner. How is it that you're hungry that you want to know what you could eat? And so as I got to explore that question a little bit more, because so many people asked it, is how I got into the mindset work and the dieter's mindset is for people who have been on a diet for all or most of their life. They have a way of thinking, right? Because when you go on a diet, you're following something, right? So the dieter's mindset is a very black and white way of thinking. You're either on or you're off the diet, right? So the on
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
good or you were bad today. Now I'm using your words. If we were ever to meet, I would, or work together, I would be changing the words, but you refer to yourself as being good or bad if you stuck to that diet or you didn't stick to that diet, right? And if you didn't, right? So now the perfectionist way of thinking is tied into the dieter's mindset. If I didn't eat perfectly today, then I somehow screwed it up or I messed something up. So therefore, I may as well keep on eating and I'll be better tomorrow. So the dieter's mindset is almost like a programmed way of thinking because you've been on the diet for so long. And I believe it's no coincidence that every single one of my clients have the same thoughts in their head and have the same way of thinking, right?
Mm.
Because we were taught at a young age. I mean, listen, I mean, it's not like I haven't been on diets myself and struggled with weight myself, which is kind of what got me into the work that I do. So, what do? Then it was, I don't know, I'm probably dating myself, but like it was 17 magazine or some of those, or Glamour magazine, where you had that 7 day diet and you followed the diet. And it's like, ooh, I'm losing weight. But the minute you stop the diet, so you did this thing, you were adhering, you were being perfect, you were following the rules, so to speak. But then when you stopped, right? And then what do we do, especially as women? We beat ourselves up or somehow think there's something wrong with us. So
Mm.
the dieter's mindset is really pervasive for people who have been on and off diets all of their life, right? And that's really the programming that needs to change in order to not just lose the weight, but keep the weight off once it's gone.
Yeah, I can very much relate to everything you've just said because I hear the same things and the same thoughts from my clients.
Mhm.
So I do have a lot of clients who come to me for weight loss as part of what they want to do in midlife. And those are similar things that I hear to what you're saying. It's very, very common and it just sounds so familiar in my head. So, like you said, this comes from a young age. This is like something and you even mentioned 17 magazine. So, I mean, we're thinking of these things or we're shown these things from a very young age. And like, where did this come from? Like, why are we all thinking the same thoughts?
Well, a lot of it starts when we're young in the family. So there's
Hmm.
different dynamics. And so while everybody's thinking is the same, everybody's, the issue with gaining and losing weight started possibly in a different way because everybody's family was different. So, you had the family where you only got dessert after you cleaned your plate, or money was short, so you don't want to waste food. And we all heard, there's children starving somewhere in the world, so this way we need to finish our food, right, to make up
Hmm.
for that somehow. Food was kind of used as a reward, right? The
Hmm.
dessert was made to be special. Sometimes you had a parent that was always on and off a diet, right? Always talking about their weight. So the person, whether daughter or son, started to hear that, right? And as we're young, it's how our programming and our belief systems get started, right? I've worked
Yeah.
with women who were in their 60s and 70s, and they remember their mother saying, well, your brother or sister could have the cookies, but you have to have the apple because
Mm.
you need to lose weight or you're overweight. So those things stick with us, right?
Yeah.
We never forget that person who might have said something about our legs being bigger or our middles being thicker or something being different. Um, and we kind of take that in as a belief about ourselves. So
Yeah.
your relationship with food and with your body starts at a young age, and it's the programming. There's a lot of women who are also 50s, 60s, 70s that were restricted food because they're a parent or a guardian kind of felt that they were overweight. And so they learned to hide food and sneak food. And now,
Hmm.
even though that person might not be around anymore, or they're a grown adult and they get to make their own decisions, they still find themselves sneaking down to the kitchen and eating in hiding or sneaking when there's really nobody there to judge them, right? But they do that because of their way their brain is programmed from being afraid of being judged,
Yes.
right? There's a lot of people who eat in their car so nobody could
Hmm.
see it, right?
Hmm.
There's the hiding, right? Nobody could tell. I stay in my car, I eat in my car, right? So
Yes.
nobody has to know. But here's the thing, you know, and there's no worse judgment than your own self-judgment,
That is so true. I
right?
think we are our own worst judge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so it really all starts in childhood for most people. There's some women who are of normal weight going into their 20s, and sometimes something happens in their life where they have this experience and they turn to food for comfort and they continue to do that,
Mm.
right? Food becomes the numbing out agent, right? The same way for some people it's wine or spending money or gambling or alcohol, right? It becomes the numbing out agent to deal with, or actually to not deal with
Mhm.
whatever's going on, right? So sometimes it's for it, some people it's not always about childhood, but there's this one experience that you have where you used food as a way to cope.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that too, a lot of the time. But when you were talking about, when we're young and how these messages came across, like you were mentioning, your brothers or your sister can have the cookies, but you have to have the apple. I just felt so sad in that moment when you said that. Just like, I think, and I know with clients too, I sort of put them in that position of thinking of themselves as a little girl and imagining, how you would treat this little girl, what you would say to her, and that just, it breaks my heart because those are true messages that a lot of us got when we were younger, right?
Yeah.
So, and
And
and that just sticks with you.
it,
It is
it
so,
does. It's
yeah.
wired into your brain.
Yeah.
So, part of the work that I do with clients is around, and I'm sure you do too, limiting beliefs, right? And
Mhm.
so it's if you believe that you're that person, right? That you're that's where the sabotage comes in, right? So what I find is a lot of, especially women, because they've been on and off so many diets and they've lost the weight, but the weight's always come back, they really have this belief, whether they're willing to admit it or not, right? I don't really truly believe that I could lose the weight. I don't really believe
Mhm.
I could lose the weight and not gain it back again, right? So they don't truly believe that they could change and be successful. And just that thought alone prevents them from being successful, right? Because our
Yeah.
brains believe what we tell it the most, and we look for the evidence to back up what we believe.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and that's where the sabotage comes in, right? It's when you really lose that belief and you're not and then you do things just to prove yourself right that you really can't do it. And that's it, just a vicious cycle we get stuck in.
Yeah, I mean, and I find in, people who want to lose weight, and I get it, you want to lose weight yesterday, right? You
Mhm.
wait until your body releases it. And everybody's body is different. So there's really no set formula. I mean, and what I hear all the time, and I always joke and I always said, if I had a dollar for every person who said, I know what I should be doing, I'm just not doing it, right? The big question is why,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
What's actually standing in your way? And a lot of what stands in your way is your old programming,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
and you don't even realize it. Like it's, you go from diet to diet thinking this will be the fix, this is going to be the one, and then it doesn't work either because in your mind you are not believing it's going to work because it hasn't in the past or it only did and then the weight came back, right? There's always that. So, yeah, what can we do to truly reshape our thoughts and rewire, like you said, our brains so that we can move forward and get out of this stinking thinking, like some people
Yeah, yeah,
say.
yeah. Well, so here's the thing. Changing your brain, rewiring your brain, which can be done. Science proves, right, that it can be done. You can form new grooves in your brain for new patterns of behavior, but it's with consistency and repetition,
Hmm.
right? Consistency and repetition. And what people don't do enough, first of all, like I have this whole method to kind of figure out how to create the change, but one part of that method is to create an awareness of what are the habits and behaviors that you keep repeating that every time you lose the weight, right, you regain the weight. So
Hmm.
that you have to identify. And the habits and behaviors start with the way you think, because we don't do anything without thinking a thought. So when I have a client who says to me, I wasn't thinking anything, I just did it. I'm like, oh no, you were thinking something. They're like, no, I don't remember thinking anything. I don't think I was thinking anything. I'm like, oh no, you were thinking something. And here's what you were probably thinking, right? I've been doing this so long. I'm just like, I'm telling you, I know you were thinking something. And it's usually something like, I don't care, but I want it. I'll be better tomorrow. And you justify all of the reasons why I was good all day today, right? So you
Hmm.
justify all of the reasons why, and you convince yourself to make yourself feel better so you don't feel bad, but you will still feel bad anyway, why it's okay to eat that food. So you
Yes.
have to get clear on what you're thinking before you can change what you're doing, because your actions will always follow your thoughts. So when I work with my clients, I make them tell me, I want to know more than just what you're eating and how much. I want to know what you were thinking when you were eating, especially when you were eating when you weren't hungry,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
I want to know what you were thinking when you knew halfway or three-quarters of the way through your meal that you were pretty much done, but you ate the rest anyway. How did you convince yourself that it was okay to go from content to stuffed? And now you've just lost the pleasure of that meal you were eating. Because what
Mm,
you're doing is focusing on how uncomfortable you feel in your body, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
to change the wiring is to first be aware of your self-talk because you will do whatever you tell yourself to do.
Yeah. That is so true. And we do all have it. Like you said, we're not always aware of it. We think that something foreign took over our bodies and we just we
Exactly.
just did it, right? But there is a thought. And sometimes I like with my clients too, I said maybe there was a feeling. If you can't think of what the thought is, what was the feeling you had in the moment? How were you feeling? And then maybe that can be linked back to the thought. But yeah, it's so true. And if we can become aware of these things, we become onto ourselves, then we can say, okay, now I see what I'm doing, right? You're just shining a light on the behavior
Well, it's shining
and
a
the
light on
thoughts.
the behavior. And then
Hmm.
as you start to go through the process, there's a point where you need to call your own self out on the behavior because you'll start to notice the thoughts in your head, while they seem like they make sense while you're thinking them, if you were to speak them out loud or share them with somebody else, you'd realize it makes no sense at all.
Hmm.
Right? Like I ate three cookies and I didn't really want to eat any because I really want to lose weight. So I may as well eat the whole bag, right? So you'll eat, I don't know, 15 cookies versus three, thinking that's somehow better,
Mm.
right? I mean, it really makes no sense if you think about it.
No, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. And yet we we do this over and over and over again. So, like you said, it's noticing these thoughts, like you said, and also saying it out loud, I think is important because then you hear it and you're like, then you can really tell it makes no sense. And then what can you do after that? So you're aware of the thinking, and then you catch yourself thinking this. And then do you stop or what do you do in that moment where you can catch yourself?
Well, when you catch yourself, you recognize. So I always say there's two sides of your brain. There's the rabbit hole voice, right? Which is the one that convinces you to eat the rest of the bag of cookies, right? The one that you
Mm,
down the rabbit hole, and your logical
yeah.
voice. So your logical voice is always in there saying, are you sure you want to do that? So, but when
Mm,
you say it out loud, like oftentimes when my clients are sharing their thoughts with me, they'll preface it because they hear as they're about to speak the words, I know this sounds ridiculous, but, right? Like a perfect example is I once had a client tell me that she would tell herself the calories she ate on the weekend didn't count,
mm,
right? And she kind of really felt that way. It was a thought in her head. And she, and it's like, no wonder why you struggle with your weight because look at what you're telling yourself, something that's completely false. And
yes.
when she said it to me, she couldn't help but say, I know this sounds ridiculous. But this is what I think to myself,
Yes.
right? So then she heard that it made no sense, that it was illogical. So the next time she heard that thought, she was able to call herself out and just be like, that's ridiculous. Of course the
Hmm.
calories you eat on the weekend, of course the calories you eat on the weekend count, right? And a lot of it is just recognizing that the what you were thinking or what you were thinking about doing sabotages you and it doesn't serve you,
Mm, yeah.
right? Like, is what I'm telling myself going to sabotage what I want? You know, my weight loss, my goals, me not being upset with myself, right? Or is it going to
Mm,
serve me? Is it going to make me feel better? Is it going to make me feel proud? Is it going to make me feel like, wow, I'm really glad I made that choice instead? Like we all know, we all have this inner knowing of what we should and shouldn't be doing. But you've got that rabbit hole voice that's been so well practiced and so well programmed all these years that
Yes.
says the same things over and over that convinces you, I call it justifying. As soon as you hear yourself justifying why you should eat something, do not eat it because I could pretty much guarantee you'll feel bad about it, right? Because it's
Yes.
convincing yourself why it's okay. And if you need to convince yourself to eat something or why to make it okay to eat something, then you could probably 99.9% of the times, rest assured, you're probably going to feel a little bad about eating it after you've eaten it.
Mm, that is so good. So true. All that all that energy we spend trying to convince ourselves to eat things that we don't really want to eat, but it's that rabbit hole voice. Like you said, there's comfort because that is the voice we're familiar hearing. I
Mhm.
guess there's a sense of comfort associated with that. And now we've got to get maybe a little uncomfortable to interrupt that voice and say, I, I really want this? Do I really want this? Is it really aligned with the where I want to go with my life? Um, yeah, it's getting out of, the comfort to the discomfort. I think that's the challenge, but like you
Well,
said,
well, well, here's
consistency.
here's what's so interesting. So
Yeah.
change is uncomfortable. And yes, you have to be willing to go through the change, through the process, to think the new thoughts, to not eat that thing. And it's going to be more uncomfortable to not eat that thing. But the truth is, you're more uncomfortable when you eat that thing versus not, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, especially when it comes to food. So, as coaches, we're just like you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable to close the gap to get to the other side. But for people who struggle with emotional eating, you're so uncomfortable in what you think is comfort, right? You eat
Yes.
the food, you tell yourself it's going to make you feel better, you tell yourself you deserve it, which is so
Yes.
crazy because what you're telling yourself you deserve, I'm guessing 99.99% of the time is unhealthy food because people don't emotionally eat salads, right? So
Yes.
you're convincing yourself to eat this unhealthy food that the evidence shows all the time will probably make you feel a little bit bad about yourself for eating it, but you believe that it's going to bring you comfort and that you deserve it. But the truth is, you get more comfort when you don't eat it.
Mm,
You get more comfort when your body starts to release the weight and you start to feel better,
yes.
right? Right now, every time you use food to deal with stress or, a certain situation or to fix a problem, you're just keeping yourself in what I call the long-term pain for the short-term pleasure, and you're keeping yourself in discomfort all the time.
Mm, yeah, that is so important to recognize, right? That it is uncomfortable where you are, even though you're feeling like it's comfortable only because it's familiar, but
Right.
it is very uncomfortable. That's so good to recognize.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
So, and I'm always really honest. I mean, it takes work to create that change, but I know it could be done.
yes. And you've seen it, right? Like
Of course.
this can be done. So how do we go from what's the rest of the process in terms of like we recognize now that we're doing this or we're having these thoughts that are leading us to do this behavior we don't really want to do. How do we move from there to be able to actually change the thought or get rid of the old thought? What do we do?
Well, oftentimes I'll tell my clients to get connected to the facts
Mm,
because when we get connected to the facts, we can pull the emotion out of it, right? So, what are the facts? You're standing in front of the cookie aisle. You're really thinking, I really want those cinnamon raisin cookies, right? But the facts are, you're I'm probably going to feel the evidence shows based on the past. I know if I buy those cookies, I'm probably not going to be happy or I'm not going to be able to eat just one, right? The facts are I rather feel better in my body and have my clothing feel better than eat those cookies. right? That's more important for me to have than those cookies. So it's really getting connected to what you want more. Because usually in those moments, people forget what they want more.
Mm, yeah.
So, before you go into the store, prime your brain to think about when I go in the store, here's what I'm going to get. If I think this, if I think about going down the cookie aisle, I'm not going to because I want something more than I want those cookies. Right. So
Yeah.
you have to, and in the way I coach, it's not that people can't have cookies. You can. You can have a couple of cookies and still lose and maintain your weight. But there's a difference between, and I refer to the word, it's not rewarding. You're not treating yourself. I kind of really, I always joke around and say, if you're ever out there in the world and somebody says I had an indulgence, they were probably one of my clients. Because you indulge yourself in this food that's not healthy because I don't believe that people should treat themselves with food or reward themselves with food. Because if you're going to treat yourself, food's not special. I like to see
Hmm.
my clients reward themselves with something or treat themselves to something that's special, and food's not special, especially unhealthy food.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
again, changing the way you think about this food, getting it off the pedestal, right? Recognizing that the stuff I usually use to comfort me is the stuff that's making me sick and overweight and might have me going on medications because now my cholesterol is high, my blood pressure is high, right? All of those things. Kind of seeing the food, beginning to actually look at that food really for what it is, not being oh so great, right? So there's like another change in your mindset and the way your perspective on what you put in your body.
Yeah. You're kind of unmasking it. Like it
Mhm.
looks like something on the outside, but then you just you take the mask off of it and you see what it really is and how it really does not serve you to
Right.
get to where you're trying to go, right? And I
Exactly.
love the idea too that you mentioned, and I do that too with my clients, is just planning it ahead of time, knowing the things you're going to do, knowing the things you're going to be tempted by
Mhm.
when you walk into the store or the restaurant, wherever you're going. Know those things ahead of time and how you're going to respond to that when you're in the situation, right? You walk yourself through it before you even get there. I think that's such a powerful thing.
Yeah. And again, you will do what you tell yourself to do. So, in regard to your own mind and your own thinking, listen to how you may be justifying, right? Like I had a client share with me the other day. She was standing in front of the jelly bean shelf, and there was like 2 for 1, or one get buy one get one 50% off. So she justified only getting one bag, not two, right?
Hmm.
But she didn't really think about, and she thought she was in her mind, she thought it was a win. And I'm like, well, where was the thought process about not getting the jelly beans at all? Because she shared with me on the way in and probably in the car on the way to the store, she already was thinking, she knew exactly what she was going to do. And
Mm.
that's the dieter's mindset. It's premeditated, right? Oftentimes the eating's premeditated. Um, like there's a plan, and then you feel like somehow you can't unwind that, but you can, right?
Yes.
You will do exactly what you tell yourself to do.
Yeah. Wow. Sounds like you're committing a crime. Every time you go in, you've already thought about it. It was already in your head. You knew exactly where you were going to go. You get
Yeah, like
onto yourself, right?
what kind of people, I always say you pull the wool over your own eyes, right? So
Mm.
dieters have this way of fooling themselves or trying, even in their own thinking process, where it's like, I remember a client, like she said she was going to the grocery store, but she knew somewhere deep down she was really going to go to the gas station to get whatever she got on the junk aisle in the gas station, right? Like, but you're kidding yourself, like the grandmother who buys the candy for the grandkids, but she really actually ends up eating most of it herself.
Mm-hmm.
right? But the story she tells herself is, I'm buying this for my grandchildren.
Yeah. Yeah. We're so devious. Our minds are so like complicated. They're not complicated because we see it. We know it's happening, especially when you bring the awareness, like you said, to it. You know you're thinking these things, but we're so underhanded and so sneaky to ourselves,
To ourselves.
which is amazing. It's not, nobody is making us do this. This is our own minds that we're being sneaky with it.
Right. Well,
And
I said earlier before we actually started the conversation that there's a lot of shame
mm-hmm.
on this behavior. So the mind has developed a way, and it's almost like you're protecting yourself if you're not, because you have a hard time admitting, well, I just want the candy. Because if you want to lose weight, if you struggle with your weight, there's the belief that eating the candy is wrong and it's bad and I'm doing something bad. Because the dieting industry has taught you, if you want to lose weight, you have to cut out all of these things in order to lose the weight. And that in and of itself is not true.
Mm-hmm.
So after all the years of dieting, right, this is the dieter's mindset, you've come up with a way to not just, well, you think you're kidding everybody else, but you're really just kidding yourself because you're the only one who's going to suffer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly it. We're hurting ourselves through all of this. But it's such an ingrained thing. Like you said, it has to be all or nothing. In our minds, it's like if you want to lose weight, you got to be 100% on the good food and cut out all the bad food, right? That's the thinking, the black or white.
Yeah, the black or white, the perfectionist thinking, right, being on or off. And when people are in the mindset of being off, they usually just kind of go hog wild
Mm-hmm.
till they start again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a vicious circle. But I know you've seen some people who have succeeded through this, who have, and as have I,
Yeah.
seen clients succeed and be able to do this. So do you have like a story you could share about a client or two that have been able to overcome this way of thinking and succeed at weight loss?
Yeah, I mean, you and I had chatted, a little bit earlier about had a client, she was in her 80s and she was tired and she had been put on a diet, I believe, from the time she was 8 years old. Right?
Mm,
The message to that little girl is you aren't good enough the way you are, right? Which leads to a whole host of other insecurities and relying on food. But when you're brought to a diet doctor, when you're between like 8 and 14 years old, right? This is what you come to know. Um, and so, and her thing was cookies. Like she feared being around cookies because she didn't believe that she could stop. Long story short, we did the work together, right? So, and we planned indulgences. Some people plan them in advance. Some people see what their plans are like for a week because, and I believe this too, it's more fun to indulge with somebody or out in a social event than to sit in your house by yourself and eat some cookies. So, we created what she would do, and over, I believe it was like 9 months, she lost the 30 pounds and she was still afraid to indulge in cookies. So we did an experiment. I'm like, I want you to go out and go to the store and buy like individually wrapped cookies, maybe get two or three. And then I want you to sit down and just kind of like mindfully eat them. And she realized, having done the mindset work, right, and the habit and behavior change work, like the cookies, it like lost its power because
mm,
she was coming from a whole different thought process. She realized, what am I afraid of? I either make the decision to eat them or I make the decision not to, right? After the first couple of cookies that she had, I don't need more. Like, this is good. It's actually too sweet, too much, because more isn't better, which is a lot of what I coach on. And it was almost like the spell was broken,
wow.
right? And so, and then there's been tons of clients, obviously, that's had success, but there was this one woman, Debbie, that I'm thinking of, and one of the things that was really, powerful for her was forgiveness, forgiving herself, right? Forgiving herself for blaming herself for all of this years, learning how to love herself more, right? And loving herself and being kind to herself the way she's kind to others, because that's part of this process, right? The self-care, self-worth, self-esteem, self-love. And
Yes.
so when she really felt like I forgive myself for blaming myself for all these years of struggle, thinking there was something wrong with me or I was doing something wrong or I wasn't good enough. And, you know, I love myself. I am worthy. I do deserve to be healthy and feel good, right? And her thing was chocolate. Like, I think she had like a couple of pieces of chocolate every day when we first started. And now it's not like she doesn't eat the chocolate, but she thinks about it. Do I really need that right now? Is this just the habit? Like, why am I thinking about the chocolate? Right?
Yeah.
Can I wait until, you know, a better time where I really feel like it's more important to me to eat? Like, she asks herself different questions.
Yeah. This is such a big thing too, is the forgiveness and, screwing up. And we all do. We all screw up, but not just with food, with all kinds of things in our lives. I mean, that's what life is about. But we forget that and we put on ourselves to be perfect. We have to be perfect. And we can't fail and get back up either. Like we can't forgive ourselves for that failure. So it takes a really long time before we're able to get back up and try again. So, yeah, that's so huge. I know in my coaching practice that is something I want all my clients to go through
Mhm.
is
Yeah,
that kind of failure so that you can get back up. You can forgive yourself. You can keep going. And you don't have to let that get you down forever. But I love that example because I think that is so many women, especially the women I meet in midlife.
yeah, yeah. And the truth is, here's a message. Here's the facts. There is no perfect.
Hmm.
There is no perfect. So take that off of yourself that you need to do anything perfectly, right? Because oftentimes, if we wait to do something perfect, it doesn't get done.
No. And it will never be perfect anyways, right? It will never,
Well,
nothing we've ever done is perfect.
what is perfect?
Yeah. Yeah. What does it even mean? Yeah, it's a great question to ask. Like, what is perfection? And, what is it that you really want? Like, do you want a life with no cookies? Is that what you want? Chances
Right.
are you don't want a life with no cookies. But what you do want is to be able to understand, that I'm eating them. You want to enjoy cookies. You want to be able to handle them in your presence, and be able to say no when you don't want one. It's just that you don't want a life with no cookies.
I mean, and that's why I teach, how to indulge yourself, a couple of times a week.
Hmm.
You don't feel that restriction and deprivation, whether it's a couple of cookies or whether it's a cheeseburger and fries, right? Which I
Yes.
myself had the other day out with my family on Sunday. So, but I didn't feel bad about it. I chose it. I wanted it. Do I eat a cheeseburger and fries every day? Absolutely not, right? Or I wouldn't be feeling so good about myself. But, you can eat those things and still continue to lose. It's about creating the balance over the course of your week, right? A
Hmm.
lot of people who ate that would feel guilty and think that they messed something up and then they have to repent, right? Like starve themselves the next day in order to make up for the cheeseburger or the cookies.
Yes.
That's just faulty thinking based on having been on a diet for more or most of your life, because most women that I work with have been dieting for decades,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. It's
It's
become so,
life, right?
hmm
20 to 30 years for a lot of people.
yeah. It's just become a way of living. It's from one diet to the next and talking about diets and, just thinking, I think when you are doing that, you believe everybody's doing that. you think everybody must is on some sort of diet at all times. But and people look at people who are skinny and think, what diet are they on? I think you get into this dieter's mindset thinking that diets are just part of everybody's life.
Well, I don't know if I totally agree with that, if you don't mind me
Hmm.
saying.
Yeah, okay.
I think that people look at thin people, people who struggle with their weight, and think it's not fair. How did
Mm,
she not struggle? But here's the thing, you don't know if that person is dieting. You don't know that person's story. So the story you tell yourself to the thin woman about the thin woman is, well, that's not fair, right? Or you watch your friend who doesn't seem like she's dieting, and it's like, it's not fair. She gets to eat whatever she wants, and I need to, watch everything I put in my mouth. So I actually think that people don't assume thin people or everybody's on a diet. I think people who struggle with their weight see a thinner person and think that they don't, right?
mm,
Without really knowing. Um, they just think somehow they're on easy street, right?
yeah.
That's what I've found with my clients who struggle with their weight. Um, they'll see the woman walking down the street and think it's not fair, or about their friends, it's not fair. Um, I hear that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Yeah, I've seen both. I've seen both, but I do hear that for sure, is that it just seems so easy for others, and why isn't it, why can't I do it? And why can't I have that metabolism or have whatever she has? And it's just we don't know their story, like you said. We don't know their situation. We don't know anything about that person who is like that.
And the truth is, there are women who can't release the weight, and it doesn't have to do with their habits and behaviors. Sometimes there is something metabolically that's going on in their bodies, right? So it's metabolic, it's hormonal, it's gut related. They're on medications that's preventing them from losing weight. They're nutrient deficient, that's preventing them from losing weight. There are certain things that need to be addressed. But what I've found the majority of women who struggle with their weight is because they eat too much food when they're eating, and they eat when they're not hungry. And all
Hmm.
of that extra turns into excess body weight,
Yeah.
right? And even the women and men who are on the new injectables, right, for weight loss, you still need to work on your mindset, because there's a reason you need to go on the injectable. The injectable is really just another quick fix. You
Yep.
need to change the habits and behaviors and the thinking that got you to have to go on the diet, get bariatric surgery, take the injectable. Because if you don't change that, somehow, some way, the weight will still come back because you still have the same brain.
Yeah, and I've seen this before too, because I've got clients who've had bariatric surgery and have regained all the weight back. Like
Mhm.
it's not just, so you became thin, but you became thin with the same mindset, the same thoughts you were thinking when you were overweight, and then it just came back. So without changing anything, you're not going to necessarily get better. Although I mean, what do you think about injectables? Do you think that is something that can boost a person into feeling better about themselves so that then they will adopt a healthier habits, or do you think the healthier habits should come first?
Here's how I feel about the injectables. I do feel like it's another quick fix. I understand, like I said earlier in this conversation, people want to lose weight yesterday. Um, but I think if you're going to be on the injectable, because, personally, I don't think anybody should be taking drugs for the rest of their life that they don't have to take. So I think that if you're somebody who's on the injectable, you should be doing this mindset work. So when you do come off, you want to be able to maintain the weight that you've lost. That's the name of the game, because the science shows that for most people who go off the drug, they gain the weight back, right? Because it is about how your brain is wired for the habits and behaviors that you have right now. I'm not going to tell somebody that what they should or shouldn't do. I understand for people who have struggled, it's, you know, and I also know how much better people feel when they lose the weight, but I also know how people feel when the weight comes back.
Hmm.
So my advice to anybody who chooses to go down that route for however long you do is to do the behavioral change work. Change your thinking. Even the people who get bariatric surgery, you might have a smaller stomach, but you have the same brain that wants to emotionally eat, that wants to eat too much, right? You're thinking the same thing, though you might not have the capacity, but somehow you manage to pack it in. Um, and it's too much for your body. So
Mm.
I do think this work is important if you struggle with your weight because you have to come out of anything that you do for weight loss thinking like a different person.
Yeah.
You can't come out of it thinking the same way you used to, because
Yeah.
if you do that, you're just going to end up with the same results you've always gotten.
Yeah. That is so important. And I think that's a good way to see it is that if you do decide to go down that route, and not that one way is better than another, but it's to also in parallel to work on your thoughts, work on your mindset so that you can, when you do get there, when you have lost the weight, you can still maintain it and feel good in that new body and be able to live like the person who has that body,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really great conversation. I could talk about this stuff all day, and I just could listen to you. I think you have a lot of great things to offer, a lot of great information there
Yeah.
that I think a lot of my audience is going to appreciate. So before we go, I always ask my guests a question, which is, what is the best part of getting older for you so far, Lisa?
So for me, I'd say the best part of getting older, and I'm about to, well, by next month, I will be 61 years old.
Wow.
So what I've found is that the older I've gotten, I mean, it started in my 40s, got better in its 50s, and even now it's like I truly feel like, and this could be a good thing or a bad thing, it's just I don't care about what people think. Right? My feeling is because when we're younger, we're just so worried about, do people like me? Do they not like me? What do they think about me? What are they saying about me? And I feel like, as I've gotten older over the last 20 years, really, I've really been able to let that go. And it's very freeing. And I
Mhm.
feel like you're gonna like me or you're not gonna like me. And if you don't like me, I'm okay with it, right? Because you have to like you. You have
Yes.
to be comfortable with you. You have to be comfortable with who you are in your own skin. And I'd say, is in regard to getting older, and I feel like I'm older and I'm wiser, and I see things differently. I have a different perspective. That saying with age comes wisdom. I truly believe it to be true. When I think about my 20-something-year-old self. And so I'd say, and in regard to getting older, those are the things that I feel are definite pros.
I love that. Yes, I think I love the wisdom that comes with our age, and we just learn so many great things that we couldn't have possibly known in our 20s.
Yeah, it's called life's experience.
It is, it is. And that you can grow to love yourself through those years as well. Like I wish I loved myself in my 20s as much as I love myself now in my 50s. I don't know why it has to take that long. But it does and it did. And that's okay because I love where I am now too. So I can appreciate that. So, if the women in my audience would like to get in touch with you, how can they do that? Where can they find you?
Well, they could find me. My website is lisagoldbergnutrition.com, or my email is lisa@lisagoldbergnutrition.com. I have tons of free resources on my website. I have a mini course, I have a short training, and some free downloads. And if I may mention, I also have a workshop coming up April 21st of this month, 2025. It's called Rewire and Release, 5 Days to Overcome Emotional Eating, teaching you how to rewire that mindset and your thinking and your behaviors so you could release the weight and not gain it back again. And again, that you could find at tocreateyourchange.com, and that's TO createyourchange.com, and you could register for free. And I'd love to see anybody listening who's interested. I'd love to see you there.
Fantastic. I will include those resources in the show notes so that anybody who does want to do that workshop with Lisa, the link is in the show notes. And because this will be airing on the 16th of April, you will have time to register for the 21st. So I hope you end up, you know, being with Lisa for 5 days and learning what she has to teach because she is brilliant in this area. So thank you so much thank you so much, Lisa, for being here today. I really appreciate that you took the time to be with us.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. And like I said, I think it's an important conversation to have. I think it's an important conversation to people to hear, to know they're not alone, because I feel sometimes the behavior of emotional eating or overeating or binge eating is very isolating. And there's a lot of people out there who struggle and they don't have to anymore.
Yeah, that's such an important message is that you are not alone. You don't have to be alone. There is help out there. So thank you so much.
Thank you.